Thank you, Madam President. America can only achieve peace through strength. We know that. Yet since his first day in office, President Biden has ignored this time-tested truth, and our service members and allies are suffering the consequences. Last week, militants in Iraq fired 5 rockets toward U.S. forces stationed in northeastern Syria. Less than 24 hours later, U.S. forces in western Iraq were targeted by explosive drones. Thankfully, no service members were injured in these attacks, but it marked the first time American troops were targeted in the region since February. In their attacks earlier this year, Iranian militias injured dozens of U.S. troops and killed 3 brave service members in Jordan. By all appearances, Iran-backed terror groups, including Hezbollah, were behind the latest attacks. Shortly after the attack on U.S. forces in Syria, the group issued a statement claiming that it will resume attacks on American troops, adding that, and I quote them, "What happened a short while ago is the beginning," end quote. This aggression isn't happening by accident. It is a direct result of President Biden's pro-Iran policy of appeasement. For more than 3 years, the Biden administration has rolled back the Trump administration's successful maximum pressure campaign against the Ayatollahs. Instead, President Biden has emboldened the Iranian regime, the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, which killed more than 600 American troops during the Iraq War. Within weeks of taking office, President Biden announced a return to diplomacy with Iran with the goal of restoring President Obama's failed nuclear deal. Then, the administration revoked the foreign terrorist organization designation for the Iran-backed Houthis. Those are the rebels in Yemen. Right before Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the White House approved a $10 billion nuclear deal between Tehran and Moscow. At the same time, the White House allowed Iran to secretly export oil to communist China, filling the regime's coffers with billions to fund their terror proxies, including Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah. And in September 23, the Biden administration engaged in a $6 billion deal with Iran, the largest hostage payment in history. It's quite a record. It's quite a record of appeasing Iran. It's quite a record of pushing forward, making certain there is money into a regime which is the globe's largest state sponsor of terrorism. Now, you would think that after the October 7th attacks, when Iran-funded Hamas terrorists murdered 1,200 Israelis in the deadliest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust, that the Biden administration would abandon its policy of appeasement. But no, that is not what this administration has done. What they did do is to double down on their policy of appeasement. So, are we to assume that they are okay with all of this? Just 11 days after the attacks, the president let the international embargo on Iran's missile and drone program lapse. 11 days after Iran had moved forward, they trained Hamas, they prepped them, they fund them. Hamas carries out the October 7th attack, and 11 days later, the Biden administration let the international embargo on Iran's missile and drone program lapse. In November, the administration reapproved a sanctions waiver that gives Iran access to around $10 billion in frozen assets. Last month, after Iran directly attacked Israel from its territory for the first time ever, launching more than 300 drones and missiles toward the Jewish state, President Biden told Israel that the United States opposed any counteroffensive to restore deterrence, telling Israel to look at Iran's failed attack as a win. Now, Madam President, can you even imagine what the American people would have thought following 9/11 if countries were telling us, cool it, back off? They didn't take you totally down? Imagine that. Just weeks ago, the Biden administration refused to commit to enforcing sanctions on the $10 billion Iran-Russia nuclear deal. And to top it off, President Biden is now reportedly looking to revive the failed Iran nuclear deal in this latest attempt to appease the Ayatollahs. Madam President, you cannot make this stuff up. You absolutely cannot. When I do visits in each of Tennessee's 95 counties, when I do a telephone town hall, like I did last night with thousands of Tennesseans, people say, what are they thinking? And you know, the sad thing about this is it makes you wonder what they are thinking. It makes you wonder what they're doing to secure this country, to secure our people, to secure the homeland. It makes you wonder, what are they doing intentionally, especially when it comes to that southern border? Thousands of people from countries of interest, about 25,000 Chinese nationals so far this fiscal year coming into our country. And oh, by the way, they're mainly young, single men. What are they doing? Why does this administration not put our nation's safety and security first? Why do they not put the safety and security of our troops who are deployed first? Why do they not have the backbone to stand up to thugs and put an end to this appeasement? I yield the floor.